That is the famous corner of the house. You see this 1947 GMC pickup. All of us kids learned how to drive at a fairly early age, and actually we could get our driver's license and didn't have to be accompanied or anything whenever we was 14 years old, since we lived on the farm, and that's what they call a hardship license. But Sandra had this friend, and I don't know where they had been over to visit Lucille or what, but Sandra and Jeanette McPherson was coming back home in this GMC pickup, and I'm sure that they was having the most intelligent conversation and talking and laughing and cutting up. And anyhow, this is the side of the house where Sandra run into with the pickup, and I don't know, bent the bumper a little bit and didn't do a lot of damage to the house. I think it scared her more than anything, but anyhow, we got a lot of laughs out of that. Now, what I was pointing out is number 11 there is Ronnie was the athlete of the bunch. It didn't matter what sport it was, he was interested in it. It didn't matter whether it was running, jumping, playing football, basketball, golf. He was I guess if you could say anything about Ronnie, he was just a sports nut. He even had a book on baseball statistics, and he'd sit there and read that book every night and try to remember those statistics on the baseball players and things. And he and Daddy would sit in there at night before we got electricity, and we had Ma and Pa Woods that gave us an old radio they had that operated off of dry cell batteries, and after we'd listened to different programs, or Daddy and Ronnie would listen to the Lubbock Hubbards baseball team coming from Lubbock. They had a farm team in Lubbock. But anyhow, out here there was 2 rows of trees here, elm trees. They're kind of a trash tree, but back during the Depression and the Dust Bowl, the government had people come along and plant trees for a windbreak. So there was 2 rows of trees out here between the house and the road, and some of them had died in here. But one day Ronnie had a pole put up between these 2 trees here, and he was probably in junior high, but he was practicing pole vaulting. Well, that's okay. The only thing is, the only thing he had for a pole to vault with was a cotton hoe. And he was running down through here, and he stuck that cotton hoe there and vaulted over that pole that was between those 2 trees, and I think the hoe handle broke or something. But anyhow, he came down and cut his heel of his foot just pretty darn bad. And man, he was just bleeding like a stuck pig. And that was back before, well, I mean, we didn't ever take our dogs to the vet, because that was an expense, outrageous expense. And if one of your children got hurt, you had to be pretty bad hurt for you to go to the hospital. I'm not even sure there's a doctor in town. But anyhow, he sliced his heel pretty good, and I remember they finally got to stop bleeding, or tried to stop it bleeding. But the treatment of the day was to put his foot in a bucket of coal oil or kerosene or whatever it was. And I'm not too sure where he went to the doctor and get stitches in it or not, but it never would heal up. And so Mama took charge, and she mixed up some of her famous salve and used white cotton socks and took him out there to New Mexico and nursed him back to health. And probably it took about 2 or 3 weeks to get him back to where he could walk again. So anyhow, but like I say, it's that's the story of number 11. Number 12, here you can see this is our 1947 GMC pickup. Now it has a lot of history behind it, in the fact that it wasn't the first vehicle we ever had, but it was the first pickup that we ever had, and we got it when we lived over in Silver Falls after we moved from Justisburg to Silver Falls, and Daddy fixed the camper on the back, homemade camper, and I do remember 2 trips we took. The only 2 vacation trips that we took in our whole life was, one trip was out to Ruidoso, and all the kids rode in the back in the camper, and that caused problems, because you get 4 kids enclosed in something like that for a long trip, and there's going to be at least 1 or 2 fights, and I don't know. I rather think probably Ronnie's the one that started all the fights. I don't know for a fact, but then besides going to Ruidoso, New Mexico, in that configuration, we also went to Colorado one time, and we went to Colorado Springs, and I remember us taking a trip up Pikes Peak, and we was in a car, rented a car, took a tour car up there, and we drove on these switchblade roads, and Mother said, "Man," said, I think we should just be about the top of this thing," and the guy pulled into a parking lot there, and about the time that she said that, she said, "Okay, get out and take a break," said, "This is a halfway point." So needless to say, that was quite an experience. And of course, I don't know how high Pikes Peak is, but I do know that Mother got lightheaded up there, and had to have some attention. And then to get off Pikes Peak, we took that car that came down. It's kind of, I don't know. It's number 13, and that's the front porch, and there was many a night that you'd sit out on the front porch whenever we had a full moon, and just kind of look at the stars and the pretty skies, and what was most impressive though is whenever they had an electrical storm in the distance. There was no trees out there, and it was relatively flat, so you could sit on the front porch and just see very nice light display. Number 14 is right here, and that's probably the funniest story, funniest thing that I've ever seen on the farm. You remember I told about the neighborhood, the preacher's kids coming out on Sunday after church, and we'd play scrub baseball out here. Well, the preacher's boy had a little bitty dog, some kind of terrier, but probably didn't weigh over 8 or 9 pounds. And he was bragging and bragging all afternoon during the scrub baseball game about how his dog was a cat killer. He said if a cat came around, well, that, you know, cat wouldn't be there very long because he'd kill it. And he just kept going on, kept going on. Well, anyhow, during the middle of, and all of us had, all 4 kids had our own cats, and then there's probably a few extra too. I can remember my cat was named Panther, and he was black, just had a nice shiny coat, and short-haired cat. I don't remember what Ronnie and I'm not too sure Ronnie had a cat. He didn't. If he did, he didn't pay much attention to it, and the same thing goes with Dell. But I remember Sandra's cat, and it was a black and white, long-haired female cat, and she'd just pet it and talk to it, and she took pretty good care of her cat. Well, anyhow, and her cat's name was Nutsy, because she did some kind of weird things, and so she named her Nutsy. Well, anyhow, out here in the barn here, she had some kittens out here. Well, I guess that killer dog of the preacher's got a little too close to the kittens, and she jumped on him, and we just all stopped the scrub baseball game because we heard this yep, 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 and we all looked up, and this is the path that the dog took. He was running this path and just barking up a storm. Well, the reason he was running and the reason he was barking is Nutsy had jumped right on his back, and she had all 4 feet just dug in and claws and all, and she was riding him just like a horse. And he was moving on. And like I say, that was the funniest sight I ever saw in my life, and so we didn't hear much from the preacher's boy about how his killer dog would kill a cat after that, but that kind of made our day. Also, I forgot to tell you about this shed here. The first year we moved there, we didn't have a cotton picker, and we had a big cotton allotment, about 285-acre cotton allotment, and we had to pick all our cotton by hand, and of course we couldn't do that by ourselves, and so families, transit workers would come and they would pick cotton for, I think they got about 25 cents a pound for picking cotton. But the whole family would come, and then probably 20 or 30 people all total, and they would kind of make do living in that long shed till the cotton picking was over. And that was one of my least favorite things to do, because I was probably in the 1st or 2nd grade, and I worked my tail off all one day, and I probably got only about 70 or 80 pounds of cotton, less than 25 cents worth, that's for sure. But some of those guys that came with the cotton picking crews there's one guy that could pick up to about 1,800 pounds, and that's a lot of cotton in one day. That's the story on number 15 there, and that